Thank you everybody for watching. That was fun. Time for the analysis. Time for the line review. After my DC straight line mission, a lot of people requested that I do something like this, sort of go over the line, go over the main deviations, and this is pretty traditional. A lot of people seem to do this, just sort of go over the line the old school way, look it out on Google Earth, so should be fun. As you can see now, we're just sort of hovering over New York City. My line, let me add that, is there. And this is the start point. This is the original line. I have not changed the line. Obviously, I could not start there. I'll go over that in a sec. Line goes all the way down through Harlem, Upper West Side, Central Park, Midtown, Times Square, all that down towards Financial District, Battery Park area. And then ends up here, which is a recently renovated park. And as you can see, this is not quite the southern tip of Manhattan, but traditionally in straight line missions, this is absolutely good enough. This is 99% of the length of Manhattan. This is definitely a valid straight line mission. This is sort of the only line I found that could work. So the start point up here on my line, which is again the original line, I haven't changed it. It was here. I was planning on getting as close as I can to that, although when I was there, the west side of this road was closed and this was blocked off, so I had to start on the east side of this bridge here over the water. And I wanted to start over the water because I thought that this is Manhattan and that's the Bronx. I didn't realize that this neighborhood was technically Manhattan. It's surrounded by the Bronx, but this neighborhood specifically, it's called Marble Hill, and it is technically part of Manhattan for some weird historical reason. That's totally fine. I crossed Manhattan proper. So I started here on the east side of this bridge, which is the Broadway Bridge at the top of Manhattan. The line obviously is not exactly correct with the elevation and everything. I was up here, but that's fine. The line is generally good enough. So as you can see, I started fairly far from the line. That's already like 75 meters. And for me, I don't necessarily mind. This is obviously an urban straight line mission, so I can't hug the center of the line like you could in other places like parks or countries or more open spaces. I knew that this wouldn't be. I never found a way for this line to be even close to silver or gold. I knew going in that the only potential for this mission would be to try to get a bronze. For me in these urban missions, I think it's cool just to try to be able to cross the place within 100 meters of the line. I still consider that a straight line mission. It's not exactly like some of the other ones that people have done across countries and states and parks and all that kind of thing. I think this is slightly different. And to be fair, there's not really any official rules to this sort of thing. This is just for fun anyway, so I'm cool with starting a bit away from the line, especially if I couldn't start, where I wanted. I think that's fine for my rules. For urban straight line missions, I feel like you have to do that sometimes. So start at about 74-ish meters from the line. That's not ideal, but again, I think it's just cool to cross within 100 meters of the line. Also with this line, it's pretty much impossible to get any sort of Burdell score with this, just because the width of some of the city blocks are so wide. You can't really hug the line in general. I just like being able to try to cross somewhere within 100 meters of the line. I think that's the fun of it for me, at least. So moving on to more deviations, as you can see, it was about 74 meters from the start point. So this is obviously not going to be a mission where, you're aiming for platinum. I don't think that's possible here in New York. It is if you go, east to west or west to east. I think that's been done before, which is still cool, but I wanted to go for the whole shebang, as I call it. So about 74 meters at the start point, following, I think this is Broadway. Oops. For a little bit. Going down, getting closer, right on line here. Not a whole lot to write home about here. A couple of deviations. Let's just go from here. That's 50 meters. So if you're spending a lot of time 50 meters from the line, you're never going to have a Burdell score. That's just, I don't think it's feasible. Here was sort of my first decent size deviation from the line. I really had to hug the left side of this, and the GPS track isn't amazingly accurate, but I knew that this was going to be a pretty darn big deviation. Here it's 95 meters. Here, about the same, 95-ish meters. So this was definitely the biggest deviation, at least at the start of the line. 96 there, I sort of measured on the edge. So it's worth hugging the left side, especially if you think you can stay within that 100-meter zone. Eventually, like in the video, crossed over. I thought about entering this park at one point, but I'm glad I didn't. It wouldn't have been a great place to walk. The path was so much better. It's just worth it to walk on the path. Maximum deviation on the path, I think, was here, so about 45 meters. Eventually it gets a little closer, starts hugging the line a little bit. You see it under the trees there. 40 meters. We're just going to keep on going down. I think that's where I had to run a little bit under that bridge, 70-ish meters. Again, so a lot of just being away from the line. Not a huge deal though. 75 there. Eventually I sort of veered towards it, and on the video just walked up this hill, crossed. That's where I tried to take a picture of Yankee Stadium, which is right there. So you actually can believe me. And then walk just the closest street I could take. I looked at walking down here. I think that would have been a dumb idea anyway, just because it's blocked off, and I don't think it's that much closer than this sidewalk. So really a lot of just following sidewalks and crossing streets. A couple of GPS glitches, especially as we get towards the taller buildings, just to check. 60 when I probably really walked. Let's put it there. 50, not a big deal. I don't mind that. Again, keep on walking. I would have crossed here. Yep. I think there's a park. Yep. 25 meters. Here we go. Another measurement. 40. And obviously there's a lot of traffic in New York, so it's not worth walking right down the middle of the road. I'd rather just walk right on the sidewalk. 20 meters there. Yeah, just sort of sticking to the line-ish as good as I can. A lot of these squigglies are just down to GPS error. Again, not a big deal. 43. 54. So the name of the game here was sort of just sticking on the right side, or the correct side of the road, whichever side of the road is closer, because you can't walk through these blocks, which are generally a little more than 100 meters long, so you can't just stay on one side. Eventually it's going to be too far from the line just to stick on that one side. Here's where I went around that roundabout on the corner of Central Park. This is pretty accurate, I'd say. Again, not too crazy far from the line here. I think I got stuck behind a slower walker and I just crossed early, even though I probably should have. Yeah, I think about here. Yep, right here. I probably should have just stayed on this side, just a little closer to the line. But again, I was already so far from the line on average anyway. It's not a big deal. I'm within the zone. I'm fine with that. If it was a different type of straight line mission, maybe I wouldn't be fine with that, trying to hug the line. This wasn't one of those missions though, so no worries there. Following the line here, this was pretty good, just this side, but then obviously I had to veer into the park. See how far. Obviously I didn't walk in the street here, but 25 meters. 40 meters from the line. I could have been a little closer, but then again, the roads, and there's actually some walls and everything that make it a little tougher. So this was honestly a pretty good spot to jump in. You can barely see the line here through the trees. I think it's pretty accurate in Central Park. Not a lot of GPS interference, nothing to speak of, except here I had to exit out onto the road almost. And this was 65 meters, and that's more than I wanted, but not a big deal. All things considered, still within the 100-meter zone if you care about that, which I think that's the sort of the point of an urban mission. You're not going to get platinum here. If somebody can find a line that's, gold from the top to the bottom of New York, that'd be awesome. So hopefully somebody revisits this. Maybe I will. Just following a path through Central Park here. Here's sort of a bigger deviation as well. 72 meters, that's probably too big. Probably could have stayed a little closer. I forget why exactly I didn't cut in here. Probably should have. But again, not too worried about it. And here's where I sort of cut to this road, which I had to follow, just because it's sort of on the right side like I talked about before. It would have been too far if I stayed on this side. Like, let's see. That's 110 meters. I can't do that. So here where I cut in, this looks like the longest point from the line, 77 meters. And then we're coming up to the biggest deviation, I think, of the entire walk, which is here. And this is just because the length of the blocks are so long. So, you know, if you go from, let's just measure on this one. Oops. About there to about there. That looks like the sidewalk. That's 160 meters. So I had to stay, you know, 95 there, 96 there. Yeah, about 97. That's probably going to be my max deviation. I'll go back and measure this specifically if I want to put this anywhere or note this down, what the actual max deviation was. I'm guessing it's about 98, like that. So I'll go back and check that out. But GPS error here a little bit. I'm not too worried about it though. In the video I walked straight down this sidewalk and then sort of jutted around something here. Never made it onto the road like here though. Let's try to measure that again. That looks like the far point to me. Yeah, about 97 and a half. So what I actually walked was probably about, 94. So that might not have been the biggest deviation, but just based on the GPS error, this will be the biggest deviation. Again, some more GPS sort of errors here. 93 meters though, 91, about 90 here, 91, 92. Crossing over just to stay closer to the line, walking right down Times Square. Still just walking down about 30 meters. Nothing crazy. Nothing too crazy there. And obviously, this was a GPS glitch. I did not walk through this building, which had the, I guess the New Year's Eve ball. Cool. The GPS really gets confused with the tall buildings. That says about 82, 83. So if you zoom out, I guess you can see it. Yeah, about 83 there. 75 there. 75 depending on the measurement, but a lot of these are just GPS glitches. Sort of just follow this road most of the way down. Nothing really to write home about there. A couple of deviations, just stay on the sidewalk pretty much the whole time. 75 meters there. About 57 meters there. 77 there. About 60 there. This one I was concerned about. This one is going to be a little tight. Obviously, slight GPS glitch here because I just walked right along the sidewalk. It had me at about 85 meters from the line. Yeah, 60. Not crazy deviations at the end here, which is good. 73, that's sort of bigger, but not a big deal. I thought you could sort of go through here, but it didn't really end up being that way. 30 meters there. And then sort of ending up on the line there. I wanted to go a little further, just on line, just to be a little further south, but it ended up being just fine. Yeah, that's the end point you saw in the video. Sort of came up against the water here. So that's the overall line. I think I had an animated or rendered flyby from 2 angles. I'll put that up in a sec. But something else that I have done is I made 100 meter bounds from the line on either side. So this is sort of the bronze zone. And I knew this wasn't going to be a platinum, gold, even silver mission. So this is a good way I've made to compare the line to the zone. Again, well within that zone for a lot of it. This is where I was concerned about because I'd sort of measured that out from the line before. So let's get a good measurement here. Yeah, I mean that's about 96 there. Nothing to speak of here. Sort of following along. Nothing crazy. Crossed over there, get close to the line. I mean, through the park, not too bad. Well within the 100-meter zone. And here's where it got tighter. Obviously, I walked along this sidewalk here in the video. And there's clearly room within that, even with the little GPS glitch. So definitely within the bronze zone still, so that's looking good. Other than that, I think that was probably the biggest deviation. Let's see here. If you zoom out, you can see the line a little better sometimes. It's well within the bronze zone there. Yep, well within the bronze there. Following along, this got a little closer than I thought it would, but tons of room there. And again, I knew this would be somewhat close, but this is sort of down to the GPS. I walked right along here on that sidewalk. Still well within the bronze zone. But yeah, no deviations that I've seen that go outside of the bronze zone. So it looks like this mission is going to be bronze, which is awesome for an urban mission that, you know, I knew I wouldn't get gold or anything. That's cool. Yeah, everything appears to be in the bronze zone, which is exciting. Well, thanks for watching. This was a little different to a lot of the other straight line missions that you might have seen, but I think this is a cool, fun way to do it in an urban space. Obviously, I'd like to do a mission that has me sticking closer to the line, but I think this is really cool to say that I've sort of crossed New York in a straight line in this way. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.